Saturday morning when deer hunters discovered the body of Angie Housman in a remote area of St. Charles County. Today, major case squad investigators divulged little about how Housman actually died, saying only she died violently, and they are encouraged by evidence left at the scene. Police still aren't saying how long the Booter Elementary School student's body had been in a wooded area in St. Charles County before it was found last Saturday, 10 days after she had disappeared from a school bus stop a block from her home. It was here only 3 days ago that young Angie Housman's body was discovered by hunters, and it is in this very area in itself that's providing investigators with at least one lead. This area off of Highway 94 and dead-end Miller School Road is an area frequented by those who use the woods to conceal local parties.
It was November 18th, 1993, in the quiet suburb of St. Anne, Missouri. At exactly 4 p.m., a bright 9-year-old girl stepped off her school bus into the crisp autumn air. Her front door was just 8 houses down the street, a walk that should have taken less than 60 seconds. But after passing only 4 houses, she vanished completely into the eerie silence of that Thursday afternoon. I have to be honest, the thought of a child disappearing mere footsteps from safety makes my heart sink. It would take more than 2 decades to uncover the chilling truth behind her disappearance, revealing a secret that was hidden in plain sight all along. To truly understand the heavy weight of this case, we first need to talk about who Angie Housman was. In 1993, Angie was a 9-year-old girl living with her family in the quiet, close-knit community of St. Anne, Missouri. Those who knew her described her as a bright, happy-go-lucky child who could effortlessly light up any room the second she walked in. She was a typical 4th grader at Booter Elementary School. She loved the colors pink and purple, enjoyed dancing, and spent her free time playing with her Barbie dolls. But beneath that typical childhood innocence was a heart of absolute gold. Something far deeper and more compassionate than you'd ever expect from a kid her age. Just a year before she vanished, Angie actually won a $500 shopping spree at a local toy store. For a young child, that is basically the equivalent of hitting the lottery. But instead of grabbing every single toy in sight, she picked out exactly one thing for herself: a pink bicycle with a little radio built into the handlebars. Then, she turned to the people running the contest and asked them to give the rest of the prize money to children who needed it more than she did. That was just who Angie was. While other kids her age were busy dreaming of becoming pop stars or famous athletes, Angie already knew exactly what she wanted to do with her life. She wanted to be a nurse's aide. At just 9 years old, she had already decided that she wanted to spend her life taking care of people. It is that exact sweet, caring, and trusting nature that makes the events leading up to her disappearance so incredibly hard to stomach. You see, investigators would later realize this tragedy was not a random split-second occurrence. In the days before she went missing, Angie was at school, acting completely normal, when she casually brought up something to her teacher. It was a conversation that seemed perfectly ordinary at the time.
Angie, teacher, I'm so excited. I'm going on a nature trip soon. Teacher, that sounds wonderful, Angie. Who are you going with? Angie, flashing her signature radiant smile, replied, with my uncle. He promised. It's going to be a big adventure.
It sounded like a fun, happy family outing. But here is the chilling truth that investigators would uncover when they later spoke to her family. Angie did not have an uncle who was planning to take her on a nature trip. No one in her family, and no close family friends, had any idea what she was talking about. I have to be honest, every time I think about the innocent trust of a child towards someone she was comfortably calling her uncle, my heart just sinks. This person hadn't just appeared out of nowhere on that Thursday afternoon. He had spent weeks carefully dismantling this little girl's defenses. He earned her trust, wrapped himself in a warm, familiar family title, and made a 9-year-old girl believe that a dark trap was actually a big adventure waiting to happen. On the afternoon of November 18, 1993, the familiar routine of the Bone household was shattered, not by a loud commotion, but by an unbearable silence. At around 4 p.m., Angie got off her school bus at the intersection of Wright Avenue and St. Gregory Lane. It was a walk she had done countless times, a safe route she knew like the back of her hand. Inside their duplex, her mother Diane was resting with Angie's 2-year-old half-brother Ronnie. She was waiting for that everyday comforting noise, the front door swinging open, the quick footsteps, and the heavy thud of a blue and white backpack hitting the floor. But that sound never came. When Ron Bone, Angie's stepfather, pulled his truck into the driveway at around 5 p.m., the atmosphere inside the house immediately felt wrong. The usual after-school cheerfulness was completely missing. Confused, Ron walked through the quiet living room and found Diane.
Ron, is Angie in her room? I didn't see her backpack by the door. She should have been home an hour ago. I thought she was just staying late with a friend.
He stepped back out, scanning the familiar neighborhood before rushing back inside. I have to be honest, the creeping, suffocating silence in that house on that Thursday afternoon is probably the most terrifying sound a parent could ever hear. It is the sound of a normal life slipping away in the blink of an eye. Panic quickly set in. Ron and Diane rushed outside, retracing the half-block route to the bus stop over and over again. They knocked on neighbors' doors, frantically calling out her name, praying she had just lost track of time playing in someone's yard. But as the sun began to set and the Missouri air turned bitterly cold, the grim reality of the situation set in. By 7:10 p.m., the family officially called the police to report their 9-year-old daughter missing. The Saint and police department immediately recognized the gravity of the situation. This was a quiet, safe suburb. Children simply did not vanish without a trace. Here, K-9 units were dispatched to the neighborhood that very same night. The highly trained search dogs quickly picked up Angie's scent right at the bus stop. They pulled hard, noses to the ground, tracking her path down Wright Avenue. For a brief, hopeful moment, it seemed like they were going to find her nearby. But then, just halfway between the bus stop and her front door, something chilling happened. The dogs stopped. They didn't circle in confusion or slowly lose the trail. They simply sat down right there in the middle of the sidewalk. The scent did not drift or fade away, it was completely cut off, like a sheer cliff. To the seasoned investigators, this detail painted a terrifying picture. It meant Angie hadn't wandered off. Right there, in that exact spot between two houses, a vehicle had been waiting. She was taken away before the neighborhood even realized she was gone. 9 long days. For the Bone family, those 9 days must have felt like an agonizing, never-ending nightmare. While hundreds of dedicated volunteers, local law enforcement officers, and search helicopters relentlessly scoured every single inch of the surrounding towns, desperately holding onto a fragile thread of hope, time was cruelly slipping away. On the morning of November 27th, 1993, that agonizing wait finally came to a devastating end, but not in the way anyone had prayed for. Deep inside the Bush Wildlife Conservation Area in St. Charles County, which is miles away from the safety of Angie's neighborhood, 2 hunters were walking under the heavy, gray winter sky. The vast woods were dead silent, the ground was frozen solid, and the temperatures had dropped to a bitterly cold degree. As the men slowly scanned the barren, leafless trees, hoping to spot a deer, their eyes suddenly locked onto something completely out of place at the base of a large tree. Immediately, a frantic emergency call was made to the dispatch center. The sheer panic and disbelief in the caller's voice were unmistakable.
Last Saturday, today, the major case squad released this aerial photograph, hoping to jog someone's memory. The crime scene is just south of Highway 4061 and west of 94, just off of Miller School Road. But major case squad investigators are still playing it close to the vest.
We're not releasing any details of the actual method and mode of that, but we believe she did expire at the location she was found.
Clues to her violent death are being processed at the St. Charles County Sheriff's Department. Strips of gaffer's tape and discarded beer bottles taken from the scene may yield the fingerprints of a killer.
When authorities rushed to the desolate scene, the last flicker of hope was entirely extinguished. 9-year-old Angie, the bright little girl with the radiant smile and the golden heart, was right there. Based on the chilling evidence left at the scene and the subsequent medical reports, investigators determined that she had been subjected to the harsh freezing elements for an extended period. Ultimately, it was the bitter, unforgiving cold of the Missouri winter that tragically took her life. She had succumbed to hypothermia. I have to be honest, whenever I try to picture Angie's final moments in those woods, my chest just tightens. The thought that another human being could intentionally leave an innocent, defenseless child all alone in a remote forest, letting the freezing weather slowly steal her life away, it is a level of cruelty that goes far beyond anything a normal human mind can comprehend. He didn't just rob her of her bright future. He took away the very last warmth of a pure, trusting soul. It is absolutely heartbreaking, and it leaves me completely speechless. Quick pause here. If you are invested in this journey to uncover the truth and seek justice for these silenced voices, please take a second to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. Your support means the world to me and truly helps this channel keep shedding light on these important stories. What was discovered in those quiet woods did not just destroy a loving family. It officially shattered the peaceful illusion of an entire community. The tragic discovery marked the end of the search for Angie, but it ignited the largest and most desperate manhunt the region had ever seen. The clock was ticking, and somewhere out there, the shadows were hiding a very dangerous individual. After the heartbreaking discovery in the freezing woods, the investigation into Angie's disappearance quickly shifted into a massive, desperate manhunt. The local police department, the Major Case Squad, and the FBI joined forces, completely determined to find the person responsible for taking this innocent 9-year-old girl. The community was absolutely terrified. Parents immediately stopped letting their kids play outside, and the quiet, trusting atmosphere of the neighborhood vanished. Everyone wanted answers, and the police tip line received hundreds of calls within the first few days. Investigators relentlessly followed every single lead, no matter how small. Over the years, they looked into multiple suspects. At one point, a man named Corey Fox, who was already serving time in prison, actually confessed to the crime. He gave a detailed story about how he and an accomplice had taken her, claiming they initially wanted to ask for ransom money. But when detectives pressed him for specific details that had never been released to the media, his story quickly fell apart. He described the restraints incorrectly and gave false details about her clothing. He was simply an attention seeker looking for notoriety. Lead after lead, year after year, every single promising tip eventually turned into a frustrating dead end. The investigation slowly went cold, leaving Angie's family trapped in a never-ending cycle of grief and unanswered questions. I have to be honest, knowing that her parents had to wake up every single morning for over 2 decades without knowing who took their little girl is just incredibly painful to think about. Her mother, Diane, was so deeply traumatized that she kept her front curtains tightly closed for years because she simply could not bear to look at the street where her daughter had last walked. But here's the most chilling twist in this entire investigation, a fact that makes this story almost unbelievable. While detectives were traveling across state lines to interview false suspects, the actual person responsible was not some elusive ghost hiding in another part of the country. His name was Earl Webster Cox. At the exact time of the abduction, he was living just 3 blocks away from Angie's house. His own sister lived only a few houses down from Booter Elementary, the school Angie happily attended. He was a neighbor, someone who blended right into the background of their daily lives. Even more frustrating, a few years after the tragedy, Cox's name actually appeared on a federal list of known offenders. In the area, that list was sitting right there in the hands of the authorities, yet he was never brought in for questioning regarding this specific case. The system completely missed him, allowing him to live his life while a grieving family waited in the dark. How does it make you feel knowing that someone with such a dark past could live just 3 blocks away from the victim, hiding in plain sight, for 25 years, while the system completely missed him? Let me know below what stands out to you most about this massive oversight. When a tragedy remains unsolved for decades, it is impossible not to ask, who is the person hiding in the shadows? Why did he target Angie Housman, a sweet 9-year-old girl with an angelic smile and a heart full of kindness? By delving deep into the investigation files and analyzing the specific methods used by the perpetrator, behavioral experts uncovered a psychological profile so twisted and cold that it leaves you completely speechless. First and foremost, police records make it very clear that this was not a sudden, impulsive act of opportunity. The fact that Angie had excitedly told her teacher about an upcoming nature trip with her uncle is a chilling piece of evidence, showing a meticulous, highly calculated process of gaining her trust. He did not just appear out of nowhere and snatch her. Instead, he disguised himself as a safe, reliable adult, slowly breaking down the natural, innocent defenses of a child. To a little girl, the word uncle means family, safety, and fun. He deliberately weaponized a word of comfort. He spent weeks observing, calculating, and memorizing every single detail of her daily routine. He studied the bus schedule perfectly, and even more terrifying, he knew the exact 60-second window when the neighbors who usually kept an eye on the street were distracted. This level of extreme patience is the dark calculation of a predator who had set a very deliberate, invisible trap. But what truly highlights Earl Cox's extreme narcissism is his deeply disturbing need for psychological control. After taking Angie from the quiet street, he didn't hide her in some remote, abandoned cabin in the middle of nowhere. According to court documents, he took her right back to his own mobile home in Wentzville. And the most shocking part of all, investigators confirmed that his live-in girlfriend, who shared the incredibly cramped space of that mobile home with him at the time, was allegedly completely unaware that a child was being held captive in the back bedroom. The sheer audacity to hide such a massive, dark secret right under the nose of the person closest to him, separated only by thin walls, shows that he thrived on the danger. He enjoyed the sickening feeling of absolute dominance, satisfied by the delusion that he could manipulate everyone around him without anyone ever noticing. Yet, hiding beneath that terrifying facade of total control was the ultimate cowardice of someone who just walks away. When he eventually brought her to the Bush Wildlife Conservation Area, rather than directly causing her final breath, With his own hands, he restrained her to a tree and simply walked away into the freezing night. Behavioral analysts point out that this is a classic psychological mechanism of self-deception. By using the harsh, unforgiving Missouri winter weather as his tool, deep inside his twisted mind, he created a mental loophole. He could tell himself that his hands weren't directly responsible for the final outcome, because she was still breathing when he left. He was completely cold-blooded when making his plans, but an absolute coward when it came to facing the final result of his actions. I have to be honest, when I think about the exact moment he calmly turned his back and walked away, leaving a lonely, trusting child in a freezing forest, the anger inside me just boils over. How could a human being be so indifferent to another's suffering? How can someone live a normal life for 25 years with such a heavy, dark secret? What do you guys make of this kind of absolute coldness? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. For more than 2 decades, the files on Angie's disappearance sat in storage boxes, slowly gathering dust. But behind the scenes, the dedicated investigators who worked the original case never forgot the quiet promise they made to her grieving family. Finally, in 2018, exactly 25 years after she vanished from that quiet street, the St. Charles County authorities formed a brand new, specialized task force. Their singular goal was to look at the old, cold evidence through the powerful lens of modern technology. When the investigators opened those aging cardboard boxes, they faced a harsh reality. The adhesive tape collected from the scene had completely disintegrated over the decades, and the metal hardware was too compromised to yield any clean results. The entire weight of this 25-year-old mystery now rested on one single item: a tiny piece of pink fabric from the clothing Angie had been wearing, which was carefully preserved in a sealed evidence bag. From a logical standpoint, anyone would naturally ask, why on earth did the police let such a crucial piece of evidence just sit in a dark box for 25 years without ever testing it? The answer to that question is one of the most unbelievable twists in forensic history, something the local prosecutor later called an absolute blessing in disguise. It turned out that the specific pink dye used in that children's clothing acted as a powerful chemical inhibitor. Throughout the 1990s and early 2000s, if forensic technicians had attempted to extract a profile from that fabric, the older testing methods would have completely destroyed the sample without yielding any accurate usable results. The original investigators actually knew about this severe technological limitation. So, they chose patience. They carefully guarded that piece of fabric, refusing to gamble away their absolute last piece of evidence, just waiting for the scientific world to finally catch up to the crime. That incredible patience, paid for by years of agonizing waiting and sleepless nights, was finally rewarded. By 2017, scientific technology had advanced in a highly specific way that allowed experts to bypass the dye inhibitor without destroying the evidence itself. In early 2019, forensic scientists tested that pink fabric. From a microscopic trace no bigger than the size of a pea, they successfully extracted a complete, undeniable male profile. When that profile was entered into the national database, CODIS, a match came back the very same day. The name flashing on the screen was Earl Webster Cox. During the press conference announcing the massive breakthrough, a forensic expert shared a number that left the entire room completely speechless. The probability of finding another unrelated individual with this exact same profile was 1 in 58.1 trillion. To put that into perspective, the entire population of the Earth is only about 8 billion people. You would have to multiply the Earth's population nearly 8,000 times to find another match. Science had delivered an absolute, indisputable verdict. There was not even a fraction of a chance for an error. The undeniable proof had finally pointed straight at the monster hiding in plain sight. I gotta be honest, learning that the incredibly difficult decision to do nothing with that fabric for 25 years was the exact move that saved the entire case just blows my mind. It shows the incredible weight of patience and the absolute precision of those investigators who refused to give up. Do you believe that sometimes fate forces us to wait so that technology can eventually catch up with justice? Drop your take in the comments. Am I missing something here? The agonizing 27-year journey finally reached its conclusion inside a St. Charles County courtroom in August 2020. Earl Webster Cox, the man who had hidden in plain sight for decades, was brought before a judge to finally answer for the unimaginable pain he had caused. By this time, he was 63 years old, looking frail and gray, a stark contrast to the absolute terror he had inflicted. Facing undeniable, rock-solid scientific evidence that linked him directly to the tragedy, he was left with no escape. To avoid the death penalty, he pleaded guilty to the charges. But what truly angered the courtroom that day was his absolute, chilling indifference. During the hearing, he answered the judge's questions with short, empty two-word responses. When finally given the chance to make a statement, to offer even the slightest apology, or show a shred of remorse to the grieving family sitting just feet away, he chose absolute silence. I gotta be honest, his refusal to even acknowledge the devastation he caused is the ultimate act of cowardice. A final cruel blow to a family that had already lost so much. The most heartbreaking moment of that hearing came when Ron Bone, Angie's stepfather, stood up to address the court. With a voice heavy from nearly 3 decades of sorrow, he spoke not just of his vibrant little girl, but of his wife, Diane. Tragically, Diane Bone passed away from cancer in 2016, 4 years before the scientific breakthrough finally identified the perpetrator. She went to her grave carrying an unhealable wound. Never knowing who took her daughter, Ron shared how, after that fateful November day in 1993, Diane had tightly closed the front curtains of their home because she simply could not bear to look out at the street where her child had vanished. Yet, despite the closed curtains, she kept the front porch light burning every single night for years, a desperate, silent beacon, hoping her little girl would somehow find her way home. Knowing that a mother lived the rest of her life trapped in that kind of agonizing limbo, enduring a broken heart long before the illness took her, is a tragedy that deeply breaks my heart. While it was devastatingly late, the heavy wheels of justice finally crushed the man responsible. Earl Cox was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. In December 2024, he took his final breath inside a prison cell, passing away from natural causes. He only spent 4 years behind bars for a lifetime of pain, but the most important truth is that he is gone forever, ensuring he can never harm another innocent child. The dark shadow that once haunted a peaceful neighborhood has been permanently erased. As the heavy darkness of this case finally lifts, it is so incredibly important that we remember Angie Housman, not for how she left this world, but for the beautiful, radiant light she brought into it. At her old school, Booter Elementary, a beautiful weeping cherry tree was planted in her memory. Every spring it blooms brightly, echoing the warmth of a 9-year-old girl who dreamed of taking care of others. And back in Ron Bone's dusty shed, that little pink bicycle, with the radio built into the handlebars, the prize she kept for herself, while selflessly giving the rest away, remains carefully preserved. It is rusted and worn, but Ron refuses to let it go, a quiet testament to a father's enduring love. Finally, after years of pain, justice was served and the family could begin to heal. What do you guys think? Does this ending bring you any sense of relief after such a long journey? I'll keep digging if there's more to uncover. Thanks for watching and for all the comments you guys make this worth it.